you have to know what to ask the machine.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden that is now more important than knowing how to solve the problem, is knowing what to solve and what to ask.
Honest Ecommerce is a weekly podcast where we interview direct-to-consumer brand founders and leaders to find out what it takes to start, grow, and scale an online business today. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Honest Ecommerce. Today, I'm welcoming to the show the founder of ZigPoll, an all-in-one e-commerce survey tool that we use at the agency on almost every client that we onboard and do CRO with. Jason Zigelbaum, welcome to the show.
Right on. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
I'm excited. All right, quickly at the top, let's just shout out the app. What problem are you solving with the app? What does it do? Why might it be important to my business?
Yeah, so ZigPoll, the idea is it's a contextual survey tool. So context, something happens, right? So it could be for any business. In your case, e-commerce, right? Someone completes an order, they see a survey. So that would be a post-purchase survey. Maybe someone gets the order delivered, an order delivery survey. Or maybe you try to leave the website and that would be like an abandoned checkout survey or an exit intent survey that appears directly on the site. So the idea is that it's a data collection platform. We offer a ton of analysis tools so you can make sense of what people are saying in context. Then also a lot of delivery surfaces, right? So you could shoot a survey directly on your website. You could shoot a survey via email, via SMS, mobile, lots of different services there that you can connect to key points to get feedback from your customers and iterate and improve your business.
Absolutely. So it goes above and beyond. I know that for a while there, like creating a quiz was super hot for e-commerce brands, but this takes it a step further and just adds a few more. You can do a lot with it is kind of what I'm.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, I'd say it's like a superset of like a post-purchase survey tool, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like post-purchase. That's one way to use it. But because it's sort of a bit more flexible in the surfaces and the connections, you can use it in a wide variety of ways. And that's what I've seen with a lot of our customers, right? Like we have a very long tail user base. So like we have people in e-commerce, we have people in SaaS using it as exit intent or downgrade surveys, upgrade surveys, stuff like that. We use it internally for that as well. So it can go across a ton of different verticals. But yeah, it's just like a holistic sort of data feedback tool that you can use to learn about your customers in context when they do something with your brand or with your product or something like that.
Absolutely. Now, when did this experiment start? How, like, what was going on? What caused you to kind of launch this, get into surveys?
That's a good question. I mean, and I'll say this a lot, right? Like I use the product to dog food and figure out what to do next. So at first it had nothing to do, like the original idea had very little to do with the way it works and looks now. I think originally back in 2018, I was thinking, I want to make websites more interactive, more fun. So, similar to like a Twitter survey or a LinkedIn survey that pops up being like, hey, what's your favorite color today or something? And, it's a cool idea, but people aren't really willing to pay for it and it didn't make a ton of sense. But what did happen was, I used the tool internally and people would submit sort of like the contact us form and the feedback form. And they would tell me sort of what they wanted from the product. And that led us to post-purchase surveys, which makes sense. And then this sort of more like broad, holistic platform where, you have event, surface, data collection, and then the last bit is the data analysis and the actions that you can take on it. So, it's just sort of a grind, an iterative process of starting in one place, listening to the market, and then iterating to get to where we are now.
Yeah. And now your background, were you in e-commerce first or was it more SaaS? Like, how did it start to align like, oh, wait, this is just fantastic for learning from customers? For
sure. Yeah. Professionally, I worked in an agency, an e-commerce agency for a while. And then I quit and I built this Shopify app that helped agencies build websites faster. And then, I was like, okay, this is good. It's like a base hit, but I want to try another product. And that was when I started working on ZigPoll. It's sort of just like, do what you know, right? So, I started with this idea. It could be useful for any website, but I know e-commerce. So let's create an app for it and throw it on the Shopify App Store. And that was sort of led us to that e-commerce vertical and all that sort of self-fulfilling feedback loop that I was just talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, the feedback loop is wonderful. And I alluded to it earlier that we like to use your tool for CRO. Mm-hmm. So let's kind of just walk down that avenue real quick. It's like, if I'm a brand and I want to make my product, my website, my business, etc., better, there's nothing more powerful than just asking your customer about it. So let's just give away free strategy here. It's like, what are we, I'll tell people what we're doing and the types of questions we're asking. And I'm sure that you've got a lot of other kind of examples and use cases that you've seen historically. We just did a wild one together on a project not too long ago. But yeah, let's start simple though, like just the basics. If this is my first time getting into customer surveying, what's the 0 to 1, the simplest thing I can do?
For sure. Yeah. So for CRO, I feel like the two no-brainers are going to be an exit intent survey. So if someone tries to leave your website, and we have a setting so you could make this only appear if they have an item in their cart or not. It's up to you. Frankly, either one works. So if someone tries to leave your website and a survey pops up, it says, hey, why are you leaving? And maybe you have some ideas like, too expensive, couldn't find what I was looking for. Not sure if it will work. Depending on your brand and what you sell, those pre-selected options may change. And then most importantly, you add a follow-up question, which is there anything else you want to share? Make it optional. Just open it in a text box. And if you capture sort of like what will happen is, and this happens 100% of the time, is you'll capture something that you didn't know that you didn't know. So maybe, your website doesn't work on mobile for, people using Android, less than 2 versions ago or something, right? Like that would be surfaced. And so that's just kind of a no-brainer that you can set it and forget it. And then every once in a while, every quarter, just check in on your data, find the common trends that come up, and then fix them and plug those holes, and that will increase your conversion rate. And then, so that's pillar number 1. And pillar number 2 would be just a product page survey. So this is going to be a survey that's going to appear on your website on a product page, after 90 seconds, minute and a half, whatever, that says, does this page contain everything you're looking for? And if the answer is yes or no, you ask a follow-up question with similar idea, open it in a text box. Is there anything else that you want to share? And the idea is you want to surface whatever is causing hesitation on those product pages and then iterate on that. So they might say like, I didn't know the size of the product, right? So maybe like your product images are shot on a white background, and so the scale is all off, right? So that's going to be like a useful bit of feedback you do. You add some sort of like text, or maybe you reshoot your images, and then all of a sudden your conversion rate goes up. And you just keep that on forever and keep reanalyzing it every quarter. And it tends to just sort of plug any holes that you have on those key moments.
As I was listening to you, you were asking questions and supplying the answers, but I was always of the kind of the mindset of always just asking open-ended questions and not trying to railroad them into something because it might not be what they were thinking. But I mean, I guess you've helped hundreds of brands run thousands of surveys. I'm sure we're allowed to agree to disagree, but I just would love your insight on that.
Your intuition is totally correct, right? You don't want to lead the witness. If you say like an option is it's too expensive, maybe even though it wasn't too expensive, they're going to click it. The reason why we suggest using fixed choices as the first question is there's this sort of like, it's lower lift mentally, right? So if I see something pop up and it's just a big white box, and now all of a sudden I have to think about what I'm going to put in that box, that's too much. I'm just going to close it. But if you have a bunch of options, yes or no, like, oh, I'll do that. And then you click yes or you click no. It doesn't really matter.
It's the micro commitment.
Exactly. And then the next question is an open-ended one. Well, there's your meat, right? There's your chance. And they're way more likely to fill it out because they took that micro commitment in the beginning. So that's the logic behind putting the fixed choice stuff first.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was making sense as you got, especially with the product page one, right? You're looking to get them to basically, people don't buy because of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. FUD is the fun thing that people talk about. And yeah, right there on the product page, they're gonna tell you some very useful information. You mentioned something that I want to bring up because we have clients that don't want to do this for various reasons, right? But you said just let it run forever, right? Just always be collecting this. Some clients don't want to do that, and I don't understand why. So I guess what's the argument to let it run forever? Like, why should we just constantly be collecting this awesome data that's only improving our website? It's hard to come up.
Well, that's why, right? You need to know what the heck you're doing, right? Like, otherwise you're flying blind. And I say this from experience, right? Like, I thought I had a great idea with this survey tool that would just be like a Twitter survey on e-commerce homepages. That wasn't a good idea, right? What was a good idea was listening to the feedback from customers who pushed it into something that's actually useful and morphed it. And it's the same for any business, right? Like you think you have a good idea, you think you have this product that's killer, That's amazing. But you got to listen to the market. You got to change it. You got to improve it. You have to make it a product, not only your product vision, but the product vision that people will buy, right? That's the difference. And listening to customers is, in my opinion, the only way to get from A to B, other than just guessing and hoping to hit a bullseye, which isn't much of a strategy. So that's the reason for collecting. I understand people's hesitation, right? Because like everyone's worried about adding like a new pop-up to their website. We take a lot of care to not be too invasive, and there's a lot of control and configuration around there and consciousness about that. But I get it if that's sort of like, you don't want to make a change that's going to hurt your conversion rate, right? But specifically, exit intent, I mean, that customer is going to leave anyway. It's not really a ton of risk. Mm-hmm. And product pages, again, it doesn't appear until you've been on it for, a minute or two or whatever you want to configure it to be. So there isn't a ton of risk, but I understand, the resistance about wanting to try something new. However, I do think that collecting data from your customers is really the most important thing to do if you want to, improve your business, in any sort of meaningful way.
Hey, everybody, just a quick reminder. Please like this video and subscribe if you haven't. We're releasing interviews like this every week, so don't miss out. Now back to the interview. Yeah, I mean, I will just be direct here in saying the best clients that we work with and the brands getting the most out of living having a mindset for constant iteration are the brands that are constantly asking for feedback. I don't know why you would ever stop that, because your website's constantly changing. So there'll constantly be new issues being surfaced by accident, mm-hmm. just through the fact that these like websites are living, breathing things. They're not static, which it's why, especially in e-commerce. And it's like Shopify pushes an update, breaks an API on some app that's powering something. And now you've got something broken on your website that you're probably not going to notice, but a customer might notice faster, right? That's just like a really simple mm-hmm. connection to make. But that times that by just so many different iterations of like that type of breaking can happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I feel like honestly things are trending faster than ever with all this, AI stuff going on.
Yeah.
So yes, internally at Shopify, you better believe they're using AI to sort of iterate faster and make more changes. Some of those will break. And it helps to have a feedback loop always running so you can catch those issues that in many cases occurred without you doing anything, right? Like I just was sitting here twiddling my thumbs and all of a sudden my site's broken. That's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate place to be, but you have to have some sort of like alert system, some sort of monitoring system. And, your customers, shouldn't be your first line of defense, but it should still be a line of defense. And then, on top of that, just technical issues, there's all sorts of other issues that they can surface, about your products, about who your customer is, right? Like, you help identify who actually is buying your product. And that would be like on a post-purchase survey, right? Like,
yeah.
If you keep that running, you're constantly getting an improved vision over who your customer is, what they're buying. Like it's different people might buy different subsets of your product offerings. They might buy different values, all sorts of things that you can use to build these, customer segments that really move the needle in terms of, your target email campaigns, your target SMS campaigns, your advertising. It's just incredibly important to know who you're selling to.
Yeah, people make a lot of assumptions about who their customer is because a lot of times people think that, oh, I'm the founder and this was my problem that I solved for myself. Therefore, everyone is just like me. And that's an insane connection to make when you don't actually know if that's true. So obviously surveying your customers and finding more of that demographic information is a fantastic thing to do. And the coolest thing about just surveying in general and what you're learning here, and we do it in a bunch of different ways, right? So surveying is part of it, but we're doing user testing. We're doing, research within GA4. We're, actually doing, hiring people to use the website and learn their thoughts on it. And then going back to kind of surveys again, we're emailing their customers and we're bucketing them out into different buckets. High value customers, everyone calls them whales. And then single purchasers, asking them why they're not a repeat purchaser. There's all sorts of stuff that you can do here. And all it's going to do is give you such good fodder for not just improving the website, right? That's what my company does really well. But then there's You can take all that data and you can use it to build out marketing hooks on Facebook
Mm-hmm.
or Meta, right? To launch campaigns there. You can use it to improve your copy on not only the website, but on like the product box itself. Like if you're getting all this feedback that people don't understand a certain like specific thing about your product and it's not on the product page, well, they're going to have that same product. They're going to have that same problem on the shelf if like you're in a Walmart or something and they don't understand that, right? So then now you got that problem is surfaced and now you know you need to also update your packaging to kind of solve for that. So this stuff is useful all over the place, not just on the e-commerce website.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, it's incredibly long tail. It's kind of been like, it's interesting because, originally I thought this would be sort of a relatively small product, but it's just kept growing because people come at me with different use cases. They're like, hey, Jay, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do this? Can I do that? And it's just become incredibly clear that this is a tool that is useful across a wide variety of different use cases. And, it's good to hone in on one, two, or three, but, I try to build the product so that you can use it for all those different things, get a lot of value out of it as like a singular, platform. And then run analysis on it afterwards, right? And that's sort of like the next step is like, well, I have all this data, I know like who my whales are, I know who my one-time customers are, I know what their hesitation to purchase is. And that's like, well, what do I do with that? Then you can sort of like pipe that data into other third-party tools, like a Klaviyo for sending email campaigns, or, Google Analytics, or just, if you use Segment or something like a larger analytics platform. There's a lot of different ways you can sort of send that data and slice and dice it in order to create sort of like actual changes. Oh, and one thing that actually you have been doing that's new-ish is, I don't know if you use like Claude Code or MCPs or anything like that, but we have an MCP server, right? So what I'll do is, every 3 months, I'll look at the feedback that we get from like our contact us form or like our downgrade survey or upgrade survey to surface trends, and then take those trends and then pipe them through directly to Claude Code. In order to create action items and then execute on those action items, right? So it becomes like a real loop that now, with the sort of like rise of like agentic coding and stuff, you can actually take the action, from the trend and really close that loop and just keep on improving your product without even being that involved, right? Like I don't have to write the code anymore. I mean, take a look at it, but
yeah, always look at what AI is doing, but trust but verify.
It's just this crazy sort of new world that we're living in where, all of a sudden you really should always be collecting data because then you have some direction on how to improve constantly given all these new tools.
Yeah, I always find that I'll talk to brands bigger than you think, talking to the audience right now, but and they're like, I'm like, oh yeah, like we're talking about what it is that Electrify is good at, and CRO is an overarching term for just making the website better, right? But it's like, oh, like who's looking at your analytics? Who's looking at your heat maps, your user recordings? Who's looking at your polling? And it's wild to me. I hear so often, like they're like, I have no idea how often that stuff's getting checked. We've got 3 people on this team, and we've got such bigger fires to put out. So I've heard that from dozens of brands in the last year. And obviously I was like, well, we'll do that for you. But also I do see where like AI will be helpful in some of this stuff, especially like just with sentiment analysis, AI rules for that. We use it already right now. And there's no secret sauce here. We know the questions to ask to pull the data out of it. But like, I think a smart person could also do some of these things that we're doing. It's not like we're reinventing the wheel here with CRO. It's just like, get a bunch of data and find patterns and that like are looking towards what you want to do. But yeah, like for example, with customer surveys, we did this previously. We used ZigPoll and we brought it in and it helped surface all of these things that we put into, like we like to use the PXL framework for prioritizing, what we're going to tackle for our clients or run through split tests or whatnot. But yeah, it's a 1-2 punch now with AI just making what used to be straight up homework a lot easier.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, open-ended text analysis. The fact that you could surface trends from, thousands of open-ended, text responses, that's something you couldn't do a couple of years ago without manually going through, 1,000 row CSV file.
Yeah.
Just now that you have that sort of next step, it really increases the value of collecting this data constantly, right? Because before it's like, oh, why would I leave it on? I'll never know what to do with it. And that has changed, right? Like fundamentally with these new tools. So you should sort of always be collecting, just, because you will then know what to do when everyone else won't.
Yeah. And just because we're talking about using AI in the analysis of the data, one of our newest hires, she was like, I'm also using it to permutate the like problem and solution. So it's like, well, if this is a problem, what else might be a problem that's adjacent to what this is? Mm-hmm. And that's actually been useful to have. It's like, oh yeah, that's also happening, and you can go back into the heat maps or whatnot and like find supporting data for that new hypothesis.
For sure. And I do that a lot too. And I think the interesting part with all this stuff is you have to know what to ask the machine. Yeah. And all of a sudden that is now more important than knowing how to solve the problem, is knowing what to solve and what to ask. And so it's just then this sort of like change in mindset where all of a sudden this data that I've been capturing, it's just become more valuable, because I no longer have to worry about like the implementation timeline to add this integration, right? I just need to know which integration to add. And now I do, because people tell me what they want, right? There's a form that pops up and it says, hey, what integration do you want when you're on the integrations page? And they'll tell me, and then I'll build it. So it just really, at least from my perspective, has increased the value of the product a lot. Yeah.
I mean, just AI in general it's just a hammer, right? And so like if you're good with a hammer, you're going to be great with that tool. But if you don't know what you're doing with it, like you're not going to be able to really get the results that an expert has. It's just like an effort multiplier. It's not scary yet. There is a future into which it is scary.
I'm scared of everything all the time. But yeah, no, I agree. It's just, right now it's just like a crazy force multiplier if you know what you're doing, right? If not, it's just a faster way to shoot yourself in the foot. At least from a coding perspective.
Or just circle the like correct idea, because you don't even know what correct looks like. And that's what I see a lot of people doing, is like wasting time building something subpar or just doing something subpar, because it still takes like, if you don't know what good looks like, how do you know that what you're making is good? You're just doing work.
Yeah, I completely agree. No, and I think that's where we're at right now. Hopefully we stay there for a little while before.
Yeah, let's make our money before we get run out of business.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? But it's good for right now.
Awesome. All right, Jason. Before I let you go, is there anything I didn't ask you about that you think would resonate with our audience?
Good question. Geez, I don't know. I mean, one thing that's new, that's fun for me, is we have, and since we're talking about AI, is we have this new sort of synthetic survey feature. I actually don't know if you've used it yet or not. I bet you haven't. It's like brand new. So basically what you can do is you can run, you can build a synthetic survey. So you can use a prompt to ask a question. So maybe it's, all right, so say you're building a new product, and you want to know what kind of ad copy or what kind of ad genre you want to pursue, whether it's, Meta, Facebook, whatever. And then within that, sort of what direction you want the copy to be. What you could do is you could enter this question. You could give information about who your target audience is, and some information about your brand and the products you're selling, and it will create a survey. So we're familiar with this part, but then it will also create a synthetic set of audiences to fill out that survey based on sort of who you think is your brand audience and who you want to target, and then it will fill out the survey impersonating those personas 1,000 times, 2,000 times, whatever. So this gives you sort of like an idea of how people would actually respond to the survey without actually having to ask anybody. And so, it's using AI, and there's no sort of real customer involved. But it's a good way to sort of gut check something before you start and figure out sort of like, hey, is this direction make sense? And you can do it instantly, right? It takes like 4 or 5 minutes to run. So I think it's a cool new feature. It's really interesting, and it's just a cool like sort of adaptation of the product as it existed to sort of where it's going, which is more of like a general data platform, a structured data platform.
Yeah.
So give it a try. It's a curious one. I built it as sort of on a lark to be like, would anyone want this? Does it work? And it plugs in really nicely. And there's a lot of sort of analysis tools you can do after you run a synthetic survey. Like you can surface trends between the profiles that it creates. which is kind of interesting, right? Because it'll say, oh, it turns out people, from Idaho in the 20 to 30 demographic, tend to respond well to this ad copy versus that ad copy. And when you sort of think about how these models were trained, right, they were trained on real data from real people. You're kind of just extracting, a unique, novel insight from, all of this training data, that OpenAI and Claude or Anthropic or whatever, poured trillions of dollars into, and now you've sort of extracted this insight from it specifically for your use case to, validate your hunch.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting, and I am going to play with it after this.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
All right, Jason, let the people know where they should go to check out the product and how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so email me whenever you want, jason@zigpoll.com. You can get the product, www.zigpoll.com. We're on the Shopify App Store also, if you're a Shopify person. So apps.shopify.com/zigpoll. There it is. I think that's it. Yeah, and then, I'll always reach out to me, answer every email. I do all of our customer support still, so that's a fun fact. So email me, and I'll be happy to chat with you.
Awesome. Jason, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for having me.